So I invited Verity Postlethwaite onto this podcast. She is the co-chair of the organising committee this year for the conference, which is in July. It's been held at Loughborough University. She tells me about all the exciting things that are going to be happening. Really sounds good. So looking forward to this event. We also talk about her research. She's involved in two major projects, one on UK sport and one the spirit of 2012. And also give some recommendations for early career researchers and her own kind of philosophy on life. You know what I'm going to start with, actually, Verity? Tell me about all these things you've got in the background, because are these to do with events and things that you've been to? Tell me about that.
Of course. Yes. So I'm in my work from home office, and behind me, I've got a bookshelf with some of my most special books, but the rest of the shelving is crammed full of event memorabilia. I am both an events geek and an events enthusiast. So you've got Rugby World Cup cowboy hat and the Red Roses cowboy hat. You've got Loughborough Lightning clappers. You've got Birmingham 2022. There's a memorabilia bat from the cricket game, because that was the first time women's cricket T20 featured. So you name it, if I've been somewhere, I'll have picked up some trinket, which I love, but I'm under very strict instructions that it must be contained just within my home office or my office on site. It cannot start to creep around the rest of the house. But yeah, I'm on a quest at the moment to see if I can get a bit more historical memorabilia, which has been quite fun to do. So yes, this is my sanctuary to events.
I'm really glad you described them for the audio. Well, we do an audio podcast, now we do a video podcast, but thanks very much for doing the actual description as well. I should have really started by asking you about the conference this year, because Loughborough University and you yourself are organising, so Loughborough are hosting it and you are organising the WiSEAN conference this year. Can you tell us, give us a little bit of an insight about what we could expect, what the delegates can expect, and also what you're excited about?
Yes, I absolutely can do that. Loughborough University is extraordinarily excited to be hosting the WISE conference this year. We've gone with quite a pithy title. We've gone with Strike with Purpose, Empowering Women's Health and Performance through Insight and Innovation, for two reasons. One, at Loughborough, we not only have massive strength and abundance of research and innovation happening within our schools, so more the academic side, but we also have Loughborough Sport and Sport Park and some of our fantastic partners that are actually doing the doing and doing the everyday. So Strike with Purpose is actually a bit of a nod to our Loughborough Lightning franchises, because at the moment we've got 5 semi-professional, professionalised women's sports teams. So we've really tried to push the most Loughborough identity onto WiSEAN this year, because we had a fantastic time visiting with Leeds Beckett and the conference last year, and a number of the people on the organising committee have actually been to the majority of the virtual or the in-person WiSEAN events, including myself, Jackie. I was at one of the original meetings in Staffordshire, I want to say about 2016, 17, when you did like a scoping meeting. You stood at the front of a room with a bit of a vision. Claire Marie Roberts was given a bit of a vision. And I think it's just kind of full circle that almost a decade on for myself, I can now be one of the co-chairs of the organising committee. So we're really excited. It's Tuesday the 14th and Wednesday the 15th of July. And we've got a lovely website for anybody listening or watching where you can look at all the different details and links. But a few highlights that you asked me about. I think firstly, we have been blown away by the amount of submissions when we did our call for contributions. So we've got over 60 people presenting oral presentations. That's the 15-minute presentation slots. We've got over 30 poster presentations. We're going to have exhibitor stalls in our main conference sort of networking space. And then we've brought together some really excellent spotlight speakers. So there's just been this abundance. And as with most WiSEANs, we've been, how do we describe this? How do we kind of capture some of this? So we've got 4 themes this year, and that's to try and represent some of the variety and the depth of which we've had submissions to, and some of the strengths we have at Loughborough. So the first theme is life course and health, cutting across a number of disciplines and focusing on different aspects of elite athlete health, right the way through to some really interesting pieces on policy and women's health. Our second track is around governance and representation. We've had an abundance of submissions around media representation and visibility, but also the way in which policies are brought out in coaching communities. Our third theme is movement, equipment and performance. So very much playing into our strengths of our Sport Tech Institute and our sort of engineering prowess in the women and girls space, but also quite a lot of submissions that aren't necessarily looking at something purely physiology or purely psychology, but some of the marketing aspects of movement or the performance aspects across the different spectrums. And then finally, track 4 is education and leadership. So from physical education to coach education to leadership on the pitch, in the stands, in the boardroom. And we've kind of got a real wealth of interest and sort of expertise across those four aspects. So on the 2 days, you'll be able to attend poster presentations, oral presentations on those types of themes. And of course, we'll have a lot of people presenting. We then have our spotlight speakers. So I will not even take a pause per breath, because this is what I am really excited about. We've got 4 main spotlight sessions at the moment. There may be an additional one, but that will be a bit of a last minute announcement. We are kicking off WiSEAN 2026 with Dr. Kate Ackerman, who is the co-founder and director of the Women's Health, Sports and Performance Institute in the United States. I myself have not seen Kate present firsthand, but every person I've spoken to so far and explained that we've got Kate opening the conference as just their faces lit up. I think she's really going to set the tone for striking with purpose. Our second spotlight speaker is Dr. Kelsey Johnson, who's a senior lecturer in sport and exercise sciences at Liverpool John Moores University. Liverpool John Moores have been a previous WiSEAN host, and Kelsey is a very good friend and collaborator with Loughborough. So we're really excited to see what she brings in particular in that sort of nutrition and female athlete health space. Our third speaker is another international speaker. We have secured Dr. Nicole Lavoie, Director of the Tucker Centre for Research and Girls in Sport in the United States, to come and talk to us about striking with purpose, I guess, over a longer period of time. The Tucker Centre has now got decades of research, insight, experience and partnerships. So Nicole is really going to bring to life some of her particular specialisms, but also working at this coalface of translating the science and the insight into practice. And then finally, we have got a panel which is called From Grassroots to Elite, Supporting Women and Girls in Sport. And our panellists all work at either national governing bodies or international federations for sport, and have the remit in some form of doing and delivering around women and girls, either strategically or operationally. So, for example, we've got Kirsty Goldie-Brammer from the Rugby Football Union, we've got Kate Kenyon from the Football Association, we've got Sarah Lewis, OBE, OLY, who is part of the GB Olympian Association, and in previous roles had a range of roles at international federations for winter sports. So that panel is kind of going to bookend some really heavy hitting spotlight sessions with what do we do, that what next, that why does this matter, why do we all do this. And that's hopefully going to knit around delegates being able to network, being able to come and see some of the facilities that we have at Loughborough and have fun. So the 2 final things, and perhaps these are the things that I am most excited about, is that we are going to throw a huge barbecue on a Tuesday evening, and that will not only have people attending WiSEAN, but some more of our partners and friends, because during that week we've got the Team England prep camp for the Commonwealth Games. And then we're also going to start the Wednesday off early morning. So if you're an early rise, this is perfect, with some form of sport and physical activity sessions. Whether you want to participate in one of our strength and conditioning sessions, or if you want to just come on a walk through some of our wildflower meadows, we're going to put on an hour or so on that Wednesday morning so that, Jackie, people can get to know each other. I think one of the powerful things about WiSEAN is, yes, it is a time to network. Yes, it is a time to showcase what you're up to and have really powerful conversations. But it's also about having fun and forging those friendships that allow the network to grow and thrive for the next hosts and for the next year of WiSEAN. So yes, very long-winded answer.
Well, you have me at barbecue. You know how your research is about having social change through events. Is there anything, because of this event, this conference, that you've been able to do, knowing what you know in terms of your research of how events can produce change? Is there anything that you've done specifically in terms of the conference, the delivery, the structure, to ensure that it has more of an impact or a legacy or create some change?
Yes, and a really excellent question, Jackie. First of all, we've got a plan. So given that I'm a lecturer in strategic event management, we have a plan for why we wanted to bid for WiSEAN, as it's a competitive bid process, as it should be. What our preparation period's going to look like. So a little bit of what we've been saying about bringing spotlight speakers together. The event itself, which is going to be 48 hours of fun, chaos, importance. And then, like you've pointed out, that legacy piece. So I think sort of two things I would state that I've kind of used from my research expertise to bring to WISE is firstly our messaging. So really reaching out to audiences to explain why it would be useful and fun and powerful for them to attend WISE. So we're hoping for around 100, 150 academics, whether that's students, whether that's doctoral researchers, whether that's active academics or people that are or retired, so emeritus.
But you want to attract other people as well, won't you? Yeah,
so
is that what you were about to say?
That's our first core audience. But then our other two, firstly, people within our Loughborough community. So because we've got Sport Park on site and we've got Loughborough Sport that hosts the Loughborough Lightning franchises, we are then targeting an additional amount of people that work with us either operationally or in research and innovation around women's sport. So we've gone out to all those partners, and instead of giving them the hard sell on the academic purpose, we've really explained some of those core themes and why that it is a really good opportunity to come and listen and learn.
Obviously, you want other delegates as well, because, you know, I don't want people to be put off here. If you're not an academic and you're not linked to Loughborough, can't come. Obviously, it's open to everybody, right?
So you've jumped the gun here, Jackie. This is why I'm a lecturer in strategic event management and you specialise in lab-based physiology, is we've got 3 core audience. I've explained 2 and we've got messaging for the 2, but the third one is that welcoming, caring environment that WiSEAN has and the over 500 WiSEAN community members that we've gone out for messaging to say, if you're not presenting or identify as an academic or person that wants to present, if you're not part of that Loughborough community I've just described, these are the reasons why you should take the expense and make the time to come to Loughborough in July and join us. So there's needed 3 different sets of messaging there, because as you've quite rightly pointed out, we won't want people to be put off, but we also want people to understand why it's quite important for them to come and why it would be meaningful. So I'll give you an example of that. Kate Kenyon and Kirsty Goldie-Brammer from football and rugby have started a female athlete health NGB collective, so National Governing Body Collective, in the past year, partly because a couple of sports wanted to join forces, but also connected to the Department for Culture, Media and Sport Women's Sport Task Force. So we've worked really closely with Kate and Kirsty supporting that endeavour. We've now got them on a panel for WiSEAN, and we're utilising that to really strengthen the messaging of why it's meaningful and powerful for people presenting and your traditional WiSEAN academic members, but the other people that mean something in that Loughborough space and to that wider WiSEAN community. So we've had a real plan around making sure that how we've spoken to people and how we've built our programme will hopefully mean something to those sort of three core audiences. But then the second thing is the legacy, is what are we going to pass on? We don't just want those 2 days in July to be, yes, really fun, really meaningful, but to mean something beyond. So we've got an entire legacy plan where our Loughborough University Women in Sport Research and Innovation Hub will be able to provide some additional support, or indeed just ways to stay in contact, whether that's becoming a member of the WiSEAN community, becoming a member of the Women's Sport Collective, keeping in touch with what our hub's doing so that we can actually get research, insight and practice galvanised beyond the event. So we've also got a bit of a legacy plan. So from my perspective, I'll be speaking to a lot of people over those 2 days about the role of events and how events could be a catalyst for some of their work. So yeah, that's sort of two main ways: our targeting of our audiences and the way in which we thought about the what after, the legacy.
What about you? I mean, because you just said, and it was really interesting, you came to that initial inaugural event, it was almost like a scoping event. Why did you come? Because at the time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got an amazing background, by the way, in politics, and you've done international politics at master's level, and then you did your PhD on the 2012 Olympic Games. And I know I might be wrong here, but there was nothing at that time that I could see that you were doing on women specifically. Why did you suddenly then go, oh, right, I'm interested in this event? What brought you to it?
Yeah, really good question. Yes, so if I give a little bit of a background and I'll come to the answer of that question. My first degree was, I read politics as an undergraduate. And within that degree programme, I use sport often as the vehicle to help explain or think about something a bit further. So I used racism in football stadiums to understand a bit more about the politics across continental Europe. I used the Brazil 2016 Olympic and Paralympic Games to understand a very political term, which is globalization. And then that led me on to my master's. So I did a master's in international law, ethics and politics. And again, I borrowed from three disciplines. So I could do politics, I could do law, and I could do philosophy. And I went into a lot more depth about how sport is a vehicle to understand some political and especially international relations aspects. So a big piece of work I did during my master's was looking at the International Olympic Committee and whether it influences international society, international law. And sport is a massive concept, so I narrowed that down. So within that piece of work, I actually focused on how the International Olympic Committee had contributed to international gender equality rights and progress, and used some of the International Olympic Committee's charter to understand whether it was a discriminatory sports body. As we know, traditionally, the International Olympic Committee has privileged male spaces, male bodies. But I also looked at international society and how gender equality movements or agendas both used and abused sport sometimes to make quite political points. So around the time that I started my PhD in 2015 and came to the Staffordshire event, I was putting together a publication around the International Olympic Committee and whether it is a diplomatic actor. And one of the sort of strands of that piece was around gender and women and girls. So I think a challenge I've had as a burgeoning academic, as I don't necessarily always identify as an academic, is that my primary research focus is politics and international relations, and in particular events. But my beneficiaries and the focus in on that research are some of the communities and groups in which that can have the most difference or indeed be the most discriminated against. So I look specifically at women and girls, I look specifically at disability and disabled communities, and then I look at geographic inequities. So I find it really hard sometimes to actually identify as someone that does women in sport because I don't necessarily do that. Women in sport and women and girls come in at the end of my research once I've done some really fun, quite technical things to do with politics and events. So yeah, that's why I was there at 2015. I was finished, 2016, sorry. I was finishing off the piece about the International Olympic Committee and transitioning into my doctorate. And I just was very passionate about it. And I knew that I wanted this to be a component of my research and a component of what I wanted to do. And I've just carried it on. But you're quite right. When you look at my publication list, it doesn't scream out women and girls.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes perfect sense. You come from politics and doing politics and events. You've also done some stuff on the FIFA World Cup, so men's and women's.
Mm.
FIFA men's cups being held in countries such as Qatar, Russia, America. Certain countries not necessarily have great human rights, especially for women, equality. Is there anything that you've examined as part of that that has made a difference because of that, or is it reinforce those stereotypes, reinforce the inequality?
Yeah, I understand the question, and we'd probably need an entire podcast to
Oh,
really.
okay, sorry.
No, please don't apologize. No, as in to get into the depth of that, because the first point I would make is, and this is why I love the research area that I've settled on, is that different national contexts, and sometimes even within a nation, different regional contexts, there are political climates, policy structures that are still discriminatory or are still creating spaces where people don't feel that sense of belonging. So a couple of the countries and national contexts you've just cited that have hosted the FIFA Men's World Cup, yes, absolutely. Their primary aim is to host a men's premier football tournament with a very interesting international federation, FIFA, that has been on a real journey around women and girls. So when I actually got to the topic, and I've worked with a global network to produce this project, what we actually all decided quite early on is we wanted to go back to look forward. So we've done quite a big study that has looked right back to the 1970s, 1980s, when the first official FIFA Women's World Cup became part of FIFA's events portfolio, and indeed when women's football became part of the Summer Olympic Games in 1996 in Atlanta. And what's fascinating, Jackie, is, that's why I said it was a really excellent question, is that there are moments in time when FIFA and football tournaments are used to break down barriers or to progress very meaningful gender equality points and rights. But there are also moments where there are scandals or crisis where football and the FIFA World Cup, whether it's the men's, women's or youth, are actually used as a negative force or a dark force to perpetuate power structures or to further discriminate or to not actually recognise someone's human rights. So this is why I think football and FIFA is probably one of the most cited and one of the most used and recognisable events that academics study, and one that I've studied in the most recent moment, the 2023 Women's World Cup that was hosted across Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. And what we wanted to do with that project, Jackie, and we're carrying it on now, is we wanted to hear from more voices. I was a bit bored of listening to what a UK-based person thought or what an American-based person thought. So there's 2 edited collections that have come out of that project so far. And what we've really wanted to do is to find authors and evidence bases where we hear from communities and national contexts that you tend not to hear, especially in women's football, to try and sort of be able to paint that more global picture of what women's football does for women and gender equality. So again, it's flipping that notion that the tournament or the event is a political situation in itself. It's not. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in a really big, complex structure at different levels. Yeah, FIFA and football are super popular. And the other very selfish but very long-term reason that I'm going to continue studying this is that the UK has got a live bid to host the FIFA 2035 Women's World Cup. And if that is successful, that will be game changing for the UK and would be very exciting for me to look at, because it will be a very long period that we have to design sufficient and really meaningful legacy programs and to really use this decade of investment in women and girls events across the UK to see if we can shift the dial and use it for a positive force rather than some of the negative examples that you cited. But watch this space, because FIFA haven't quite confirmed yet whether they're happy with our bid, but we should hear by the end of 2026. And so yeah, ask me again in 12 months.
Sounds exciting. Oh, you put that so eloquently. Obviously, this is your research area and I've got no clue what I'm talking about. So thanks for actually putting everything into context and talking about it so knowledgeably as well. What are your future plans for research?
Thank you. That's a really lovely question. I joined Loughborough in 2023. And I joined on something called a Vice Chancellor's Independent Research Fellowship, which is quite a fancy word for an early career research fellowship. So I've had a real privileged position for a couple of years. And in December 2024, I became a lecturer. So I've got a full lectureship now, which was permanent, which again, very privileged in the current moment. So what I've done is I've spent the past 12 to 18 months thinking about that very question, because part of my strength and weakness is I like to do a lot. I like to work with people. I like to take many things on. So I was really challenged by a couple of mentors and friends at Loughborough and outside of Loughborough to how is your career path sustainable? Because if you carry on at the pace that you do or the volume that you do, what are you going to do well, and what is that sort of long term? So I'm not going to lie to you, Jackie, it's taken me about 12 months to think that question through and do some sort of deep soul searching. So I've got three key points at the moment, which I shared with you before the call, and then I will answer what my research direction is. One is to do my job well and only my job well. Two is to have a really good work-life balance. And three is to be kind. So if I can keep those three things up in the next period of my career, so say the next 3 years, I will be a very happy and satisfied young woman. But what my research looks like is a whole different kettle of fish. I've got two live projects at the moment, two major live projects. One is connected to the events I've just described that will be hosted in the UK. So Loughborough University and myself as a project co-lead is a social impact partner with UK Sport. So we're working directly with events so that they understand, learn and be better at delivering and being strategic around social impact and events. So that's keeping me very busy. For example, next week I will be doing some live field work at the World Team Table Tennis Championships at the Copper Box in London. And then secondly, as you alluded to, my doctorate was on London 2012. So I looked at the Inspire a Generation legacy aim and how that was governed and managed. And I was very fortunate to work with Spirit of 2012, which came after London and recently shut. And what Spirit have very kindly bestowed upon Loughborough is their entire knowledge bank. So I have now got a wealth of knowledge and evidence that needs to be put into an archive, and it's all around social and community events. So my big sort of 3-year project will be making sure that the live knowledge bank that's freely available on a website, but also some of the unpublished papers we've received, can be used for the next 10 years, the next 10 years, the next 10 years. And that's all about social and community legacy. So two big projects between Spirit 2012 and UK Sport. But what I'm getting better at as I become a bit more experienced in my role is how things knit together, and importantly, which is why I gave you the first part of my answer, is how it's sustainable. So again, ask me in 3 years' time, especially with Spirit 2012. But yeah, I'm super lucky, Jackie. I've got a solid foundation at the minute, and I'm just, yeah, as you can hopefully see by the smile on my face and the energy in my voice, I'm pretty excited for the next few years.
Does that excitement though mean that you could end up doing too much? You talked about work-life balance and you talked about doing lots and lots of things. And I'd looked at everything that you'd done because you had a fellowship in Japan, which sounded really exciting. You've got your own website with blogs on it. It seems as though you are doing an awful lot. Is there a danger, even with just your three goals on your two areas that you're looking into for the next 3 years? Could that become too overwhelming? Do you think you're going to manage that?
I think that's a really, really fair point, and as it may come as no shock to you, you're not the first person to frame that problem. And I'm going to answer it with two questions. One's a bit of a sassy answer, is I think that academia, especially for early career researchers, so if you are currently a student or you're trying to transition into being a researcher in an academic university setting or in an organisational setting, we breed this sense of needing to be productive constantly, always getting outputs. And the bar at the moment for what is deemed to be successful and productive is so high. So I think the actual sector and the notion of what is productive and what is too much needs to really crack that challenge. And I know there's a ton of work happening around research, innovation, culture, and the health and well-being of early career researchers. And I'm part of some of that, because I think we are forcing people to a certain extent to take on quite a lot and actually not think through and reflect. So my second answer is I've just really worked on, and it's incredibly disciplined on how I concept time and how I use time. So again, for those that are listening to this that know me quite well, they will know that I use a Pomodoro tracker every day. So I track my time every day, Jackie, and I can notice when I'm becoming quite tired, or I can notice when, say, a deadline for a project is beginning to slip. And that's not on accident. I have honed in on and used all of the research at Loughborough the past 3 years to build up my project management expertise and experience, to shadow and learn from people that have had major projects such as the ones that I'm undertaking, but also to really push myself to develop this more of, I guess, an industry perspective on productivity. So instead of just becoming the best lecturer in strategic event management, I've also really honed in on being the best project manager, the best person that can look after funds for the project, how to recognise partnerships. So I've really worked on that. And again, proof will be in the pudding. You might speak to me in 3 years' time and I'm working as a barista in an independent coffee shop in Lisbon because
Sounds great.
because I've hit burnout. But do you know what? I'm so disciplined at the moment, and that's why I've got my 3 core values and my 3 core objectives. But also, just for anybody out there, hopefully it's relatable. And this is partly why I also like being part of WiSEAN, is that I want to work with like an ethic of care. Like, again, quite a lot of the systems and structures that we work within are quite competitive, quite masculine based. And I'm just really passionate about, if I miss a deadline, it's okay. If something goes wrong or there's a failure, I'm all right. I will try my best and do really exciting, important stuff. But yeah, you're completely right. I'm incredibly vulnerable to doing too much, but I can't help it, Jackie. I really enjoy what I do and I'm pretty good at it.
No, it's amazing that as an early career researcher that you have been able to give yourself time to reflect on what are your core things that you would like to do and how you're going to manage your time over the next few years. And I think there can be a situation, especially when you first start, that you just are trying everything because you're trying to please or trying to do the right thing or trying to be the best. Is it necessarily about being the best? You know, you did mention I want to be the best at that, but is it though? Because shouldn't we just be absolutely amazed that we're even existing and handling all the pressures that we have in our life, that we are doing the best that we could possibly can with the resources and the time that we've got? So set your goals differently. It's not about the goals, but it's about doing the things that you enjoy doing and that you love doing. That's your thing that you should be focusing on, rather than I need to achieve this, this and this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. And just to reiterate, I don't want to be the best X or Y. I want to be the best version of Verity. Like that's what will sustain me. Is I'm very personable, very sort of people driven. So yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think if someone is listening that's an early career researcher that's on a fixed term contract or entering into a space where they're trying to become a bit more independent, I think it is just a balance between what you've just said. On the one hand, finding those reflective spaces and the way in which to find what being a researcher means to you and how it is sustainable, but also some of the structures, unfortunately, are still built around key performance indicators. So can you also balance hitting some of those to make sure that in the eyes of others you are successful? So there's a really fine balance there, and I'll give you a really reflective answer and be completely honest with you. I knew taking on the Spirit of 2012 project and the UK Sport project, something would have to give, and arguably for me that's my publication numbers. So the amount of journal articles that I will be publishing in the coming years will be lower than the previous 5 years. Am I a bit sad and cross about that? Yes, but it's because I'm doing really meaningful, impactful stuff with partners. So I've just kind of reconciled that fine balance and made sure as much as possible I'm in control and as planned as I can be. Because you're absolutely right. You can really lose focus. You can really not see the wood for the trees and just spiral into what I think typically in academia or in other spaces where people research, we deem it to be burning out. So yeah, if someone turns to me and says I'm vulnerable to be burned out or to be stressed, I'll be like, yeah, great, thanks, but I've got my own plan over here. So good one, but I'm going to crack on. So yeah, we'll see where I get to, but I think it's a really fair comment. And I think hopefully anybody listening, it's just also reassuring. I think the current climate we're in, perhaps this isn't spoken about as much. And if I'd just come on this podcast today and celebrated and proclaimed all the really fancy fun things I was doing, it would be disingenuous because my everyday also has as many challenges and negatives. So yeah, no, it's a really, really good question, Jackie. Thank you for letting me share.
I think you're going to be really successful. I think you've got this in the bag. I think you're going to be great. Going back to the conference, I'm really looking forward to it. Now that you've talked it up and I'm amazed by it. I think it's going to be great. So really looking forward to that. And I'm hoping other people who are listening can come and talk to you specifically if they've got more questions to ask you about your research and what you're doing and how you've gone about things. That would be great. Thanks ever so much for joining the podcast today.
Thanks so much, Jackie. Yes, if you want to speak to me as Verity in my research area, then my email is very readily available. If you want to speak to anybody about WiSEAN, because it is not just me at Loughborough that is contributing this, we have got a whole host of fabulous people. We've got a specific email that is on the WiSEAN 26 website. So any questions or concerns, please reach out. And I'm also really excited for everyone listening that's coming in July. It is going to be so fun. And I'm going to try and make sure that I get to say hello and have a quick chat to everyone that hits the WiSEAN space in some form. That'll be me being my hostess with the mostess. That's the northerner in me. So yeah, just massive thank you for letting me come on today and share, Jackie. Some excellent questions. And yeah, catch everyone in July.
Lovely. Thanks very much.